All right, so let me remind you again. We've got our pillars, we've got these stones that we are honing back into. Why do we do what we do? Number one, you're a what? You're a disciple. Okay? And in order to go through that, why do we want to be a disciple? All right, to be like the rest, to fulfill the Great Commission. Okay, this is your walk, this is your call. You will have to answer for it. Again, I will say it. This is not a place where you come to, you sit down, you hear a piece of the word, and you don't go and apply it. There is an expectation. You're here because you want to be taught. You want to receive clear instruction. You want to understand God better so that we can better represent Him. If we misunderstand something, we are going to misrepresent Him. Let me tell you what's at stake. Misrepresenting God will lead someone to misunderstand Him. You've heard it said before, you might be the only Bible people ever read. We are disciples first and foremost. That becomes part of our identity as sons and daughters. That we are loved, we are accepted, we are forgiven, we are equipped, we are the bride of Christ, we are a kingdom of Kohanim, we are kingdom representatives because we were baptized. Because we let everything go, because the old creation must die so that we can be made new. Not make the old creation better. The old creation is dead. That we will let go of all of that so that we can fit into God's bigger picture. That we are part of that kingdom means that we have to operate as a body, that we understand that Yeshua is the head and we are His hands and feet. We are the body. And being part of a body is because we're all on the same page. We're supposed to be in unity. We're supposed to be operating in love. And because of these things, we will understand our place. And we spoke about a little bit in the end of last session, just to be part of that body, what does that look like? And also, what does leadership in that body kind of look like? And if we come underneath it, knowing that this is God's structure, that if we push up against that, we're pushing up against Him. Guys, hopefully what you're seeing is that even if I take one piece of these things away, it's always going to boil down back to the previous one. You might not be a leader, but you're part of the body. Maybe you're all alone where you're going to be, but you're part of a greater community. But that doesn't mean you stop being a disciple, because that doesn't mean that your identity has changed. Don't get so hung up in the congregation. Don't get so hung up in the building. Don't get so hung up in your job description or anything along those lines. God says you are, and we have to live that out. That's the expectation. These are not my expectations. God has put them in place, and I'm holding you to His expectations. So hopefully that when God looks at my life, He will say, okay, Vince, I gave your congregation, what did you give them? And I say, Father, the best thing I could do is give them you. And it's our job to keep you safe. It's our job to confront things that have no place in God's kingdom. It's our job to uphold truth when the world is so busy trying to redefine it. They're saying, oh, we use excuse after excuse, and hopefully during these couple of sessions, you might have identified a few of your own excuses. And we realize how quickly we walk away from the bigger picture. Now, the next one that we're going to go into is that if God or Yeshua is our head, parents, you are next in line, children will come underneath. Understand, parents, you are the representative of God's kingdom to your children. I have been in the room and I have discussed many times. I've shared testimonies of what happens when the father gets it wrong. I'm not talking about a little bit wrong in theology. I'm talking about being completely absent, being completely there, walking away from God. What does that do to that child? I shared a testimony once with my cousin. The last time she saw her father, she was 3. Thank God, she grew up to be a lovely young lady. But she always had a problem, up until a point, thank God. That when she read Father, she couldn't pray Our Father. She never knew what that was. God released her from that. That stuff should have happened in the water. When you let go of your past, when you let go of your parents' mistakes, you become a new creation and you hold on to who you are. But for us who know the truth, for us who take on that joke, who say, listen, all right, I am daddy in this house and I will always point my kids to God. But I want to show them what a relationship with God really looks like. I want to show them where the boundary lines are. I want to say, listen, this is what we trust. God, if we do this, we will be safe. I love you enough to keep you safe. And parents will know every stage comes with its own challenge. You start them off as babies, self-preservation isn't high up on their list. They're ungrateful little creatures. Mel can smile. Why? Because probably at 2 o'clock in this morning, Liam was shouting at her, and he wasn't saying, I love you, Mummy. Sorry to disturb your sleep. Would you please change my nappy? Every parent knows that time you have to love that kid, and love equals action. Love doesn't mean pat on the head. I love you. Love means I'm going to get up and I'm going to make you a bottle. Love means I'm going to burp you. Love means I'm going to smack your hand when you're trying to stick your finger in your plug. Love means. And then they grow up. Then you go through what people call the terrible 2s. I said the terrible 3s. Those are way worse. They get all this emotion that comes into their lives and they don't know how to process it. Maybe some parents that are going into the teenage years would identify. They have all these things going on inside of them, but they don't know what it is. They can't say, I am feeling anxious. Heck, I know some parents who are so, let's say, emotionally unaware that they can't process their own emotions. And then you expect your kids to do it. You're supposed to have this figured out. You're supposed to be able to go, listen, I'm feeling fearful, this is why. I'm feeling anxious, this is why. I'm feeling like God has left me, this is why. And I know where this is coming from, but instead what we do is we throw tantrums, and then when the kids do it, we tell them, no, wrong, bad behavior. You want to understand your kids, or you want to understand yourself, look at your children. We've had more than one time where I've looked into my children's dawning faces, and I've heard myself. And I've either had to go, yes, please, that's what I'm aiming for, or, oops, okay, we're going to have to change the direction on that one pretty quickly. Parenting is a gift, and it's something that most people do not understand. You are invested in a selfless relationship. Marriage is one, we'll get to that. But I have to understand that me as the man, I am held accountable to that standard. And my children have to, that when daddy puts his foot down, he doesn't do it for any reason, but because my number one priority is you. You know, we get to different stages. I recently had a discussion with Rachel. You know, she's turning 10, and boys like me. I said, all right, well, come sit with daddy. We discussed the worldly idea of dating and why that doesn't work. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to have to ask you to do something. I said, I looked at her and I said, do you trust me? I said, yes. I said, okay, good. I trust God. I said, when we're ready to actually look for someone who's going to treat you right, I want you to trust me enough that I know what you need, even when you don't see it. And she looked at me and she said, okay, Daddy. I have to prepare my daughter to show her what love looks like so that when she sees it from the guy I'm going to have to go. There was this rather random poem that this father once wrote, so it's very satire, and he says, if you're worried about me, don't panic, my wife's a better shot than I am, and don't mess with my kids and all this stuff. But ultimately he came up to the point where he says, you know what, I have taught this girl, my daughter, what love looks like, and I have to now hand her over to you so you can teach her the rest. I want you to hear that from a godly perspective. If they see God's love in you, echoed, what do you think they're going to gravitate towards? So it's our responsibility. My heart's desire is that they would pick someone that's godly, because I know there's a standard. They will fight for their marriage, even when it's difficult. They will go, you know what, I'm still figuring some things out. I don't have it all figured out, but God does. And the best thing I can do is be what this book says I need to be for you. Because we all have or know of someone who didn't do it that way. And if you're sitting in that situation where you have mucked up for such a long time that you think there's no hope, there is always hope. Change is a choice. And we have to be accountable enough and say, you know what, absolutely, when I read this book, when I said I'm a disciple and I haven't been me, I'm the problem. When I said I understood my identity, I really didn't, I'm going to fix that. If I said that I'd let the old creation go and I didn't, Father, help me, I need to let it go. If I said I would raise my kids in a certain way and I've shown them something contrary, don't think your children are not paying attention to what you're doing, because you really want to understand where they get their behavior from. They will look at you. We spoke about leadership just before this, and you said, let him show that his kids are respectful. If your kid cannot even walk up to you, and even when they are feeling wronged, that they cannot go, I'm not going to shout. That's my father. I will not speak down to my mother. And even when a parent understands their kid is wrong, that you will look at them and you will stop and you will control your tone and you will say, you are worth more to me. Open up your ears. I need you to hear this. Now, the hardest things you will do, okay, let me not rephrase that. Some of you guys find it easy. And the hardest things I find that I have to do is discipline. Because it breaks my heart that I have to stand up and I have to go, enough's enough. It hurts me every time. They don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it. But if I don't, I lose them. They don't understand consequences unless I teach them consequences. They don't understand love unless I teach them love. They don't understand who they are unless I show them who they are. Listen to the problem. If your identity is so caught up in the past, you will never be able to show their kids who they really are. Because you're looking at them from your perspective, not from God's. I don't want them to have my old identity. I don't want them to understand my old default when things didn't go wrong or things went wrong. I want them to understand who I am now and whom I'm aiming to be. I want them to understand God. I want them to understand this is what happens when things get tough. This is what Daddy does. When the whole of the world is losing their mind, what does my father look like? Is he stressing himself silly? Or is he standing firm with a wink in his eye going, God's got this? When the finances are tight, don't worry, God still loves us. How does he treat how we treat our spouses? It says a lot about who we are and what we value. Now, I'm talking about a normal biblical relationship where we're believers. I'm talking about these ones where the one is abusive and the other one is just trying to hold on for dear life. I'm talking to this congregation. When we're standing over here and we're looking at each other, and for some unknown reason, we think that we can treat our spouse worse than we would even treat a person in the street. That you think it's okay to shout at them, to threaten them, to growl at them, to do whatever. You wouldn't do that to anybody in the street. We find it disrespectful. We find it mean. We find it ungodly. And some of you are singles, pay attention, because if you walk into a room and a guy treats you like that, leave. We've got this thing in the head that you have to be here. So I can have my say, and well, you know, divorce is frowned upon in our circles because God hates divorce, so I expect you to be here the next day. I don't care if you're not happy. Now, over the years, I've had many different sessions with people, and there are some of the problems that we have. Husbands, ladies, you can pay attention to. But for the men in this room that are married, we've got a couple of issues, and this is going to be on both sides. Is that, guys, no one in your family should be nervous to come have a conversation with you. They should be able to walk up to you and they say, you know what, even if they're probably not, I'm not talking about the, you know, hi, I crashed your car and, you know, because I was out partying with my friends the night before, can they be nervous? But I'm talking about just generally coming up to you and saying, listen, Dad, or my husband. No woman should be nervous of coming to their spouse and saying, listen, I don't think you should do that. And I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek because I know there are some examples out there that you've probably had to deal with. But I have probably more examples that husbands are more nervous of coming to their wives because of their reaction. I had a discussion once with a guy. And I said, listen, I'm going to have to come and talk to your wife. I'm telling you first. What she's doing is not biblical. But I'm telling you now, and these were my words, I'm nervous of her reaction. His words were, me too. Because reason left the room. Now let's point it back into a leadership motif. Do you think Yeshua should have been nervous to talk to anybody? No man should have to sit there and think about how he's going to phrase this so he doesn't get shouted at. No wife either. If you are both disciples, if you both understand your identity, if you have both left your old creation behind, you should be able to come up and say, listen, I don't like that. Can we talk about that, please? I'm not trying to shoot you down. And again, because we haven't left our trauma in the water, our old creation, what happens is as soon as someone says, okay, show of hands, spouse walks up to you and goes, let's talk. How many of you start to think bad? Oh, don't fib. Stick up your hands. Let's talk. Is normally one of those conversations of where the guy immediately thinks, what did I do wrong? And he starts scrambling to think, I need to cover. Ladies, can I remind you, you're talking to the head of the house. You are talking to the guy that God is holding accountable. You rebel against him, you're rebelling against Yeshua. It's that plain, it's that simple. Man, if you're the one you're the one who's representing Yeshua and you're accountable to him. There's a brokenness in our society that says it's okay. Biblically, this is not okay. You need to foster a relationship that even though my wife might be terribly unhappy, she must have the freedom to come up to me and says, I need to talk. And I need to shut off my brain long enough to say, listen, this isn't about you. Stop being insecure. Ladies, if you haven't figured this out yet, you want an insecurity? You want to understand insecurity? Look at the men in this room. They shouldn't be, but I'm telling you, many of them are. We sit there and we focus on it. And everyone asked, remember in the first session I asked who was insecure? I said, close your eyes. 99% of the people stuck up their fingers. They were like, that's me. So when you hear, we need to talk, you immediately equate that to, I'm not good enough. That's a lie. That's the enemy. That's your doubt because you don't understand you're a new creation. That if my wife comes up to me and says, we need to talk, I need to hear we can do something better. I need to hear that my partner who's bringing balance in my relationship is coming up to me and says, listen, I have an idea. And for me as a man, I need to learn, and I've had to learn, to keep my mouth shut. Because if you're defensive long enough, all you know how to do is to bob and weave. And all you're focusing on is, yeah, but. And you're cueing your next argumentative point, but you're not listening to what the person's actually saying. Ladies, have you ever done that? You say I mustn't stop acting like this. But what about you? You don't think I'm a Christian. Well, have you looked in the mirror? Are we addressing any issue? Are we cultivating a relationship of love, or are we just trying to deflect so that we feel better because we want an argument? You should not, in any way, shape, or form, in any marriage, just like your children, should never have to fear coming up and having a conversation about something that they're struggling with. Husbands, Adam was passive. You better not be. Whether you like it or not, it is your responsibility. You will teach your children diligently. You will stand up as the head of the home and say, it's my responsibility. Ladies, you are not built for it. Don't take it. Listen to me carefully. If your husband refuses to lead, that doesn't stop you from being a disciple. It doesn't give you the right to walk away from your commission. It doesn't change your identity. You walk regardless. Same thing as if your wife refuses to do it. If she doesn't want to be this powerful partner that's supposed to be with you, you still have to walk. That means you press in harder. You are responsible. Ladies, you are responsible to be their helper. You are the one that's in their corner regardless. The world says he's a failure, you tell him, no, you're not. I'm not good enough. You are more than. And I'm not going to pull from this emotional serum to puff him up. You are going to pull from scripture and saying, God says you are. You lift your head high because you are the head of this house, because God does not make mistakes. Don't you dare believe that. I'm standing here, I'm telling you, you're wrong. There is nothing that will build up a man's confidence like the woman standing next to him and says, we're in this together. I chose you. God chose you. You might get it wrong from time to time, and I'm talking about someone who's actually trying here. Don't let those insecurities of the past and the enemy get into your head to tell you that you're not anything but the head of that home. And ladies, that you are not a failure. How many times, women, we've got this expectation that unless you have cleaned the house from top to bottom, fed the children, fed the husband, massaged his feet, 50 other things that you need to get done, you are a horrible wife. Do me a favor, go look in the scriptures and tell me where you find that verse. Your main job is to be there to balance him, to come alongside him. Ladies, you cannot drag him. You cannot push him. You cannot beat him. Men, it's the same thing for your spouse. You can stomp your feet really loud and hard. Don't stick up your hand if you've tried this. But I want you to think, when you've done, what type of results did you get? Oh yes, everybody was very lovely to me afterwards and everything worked out just fine. Or did you realize that that's not the way it works? You see, there's something about a marriage that talks about this horrible word. When I say horrible, it's been twisted. We use the word submission. And for the most of us, the first time that comes up, you think of either a dictatorship or an MMA fight. When someone's tapping out, that's when you know that's what submission looks like, guys. That's not what he's talking about. It's like there I was, we had a discussion that ended up with me having him in a headlock, and my husband is much better behaved now. After we got him out of hospital, we agreed. He's always wrong. That's not the way it works. Submission is something that means I'm accountable to. And before we get into the, yes, the wife must be submissive to the husband. When we want to quote those verses, it says submit to one another. Why? Because that's what disciples do. I'm accountable to you. If I go off on a tangent and start teaching you things that are not biblical, I expect you to come to me and say, Vince, where do you get that from? I expect you to walk up to me when you see me going off on, and say, oh, that's it, guys, thanks very much. But it's not actually about a convocation anymore. It's actually about parties at Mike's house. I expect you to walk up to me and go, listen up. That is not Yeshua. But don't pat yourself on the back because you're right. I expect you to come up to me because you actually care about my mistake. You care about my salvation. You care about me misrepresenting God. And husbands and wives are supposed to do the same. If you see someone going off on a direction that is un-Christ-like, it is your responsibility to look at them and say, remember Yeshua. Are you a disciple or not? And I know that's not everybody's situation. If they're not there, pray. You're not going to argue anybody into the kingdom. But that doesn't mean you don't walk. We don't make excuses. Men, you are responsible. You are the covering for that house as Christ covers you. You must lead according to the word. Ladies, you will bring balance to your home, not imbalance. You bring nurture, you bring counsel. A wise man will listen to his helper. A lot of the times, I understand my faults. But sometimes I go, oh, it's just the way I am, and I shirk my responsibility to change. That's rubbish. But if I know my wife is stronger in that area, why wouldn't I listen to her? Not that she gets to make the decision, guys. It's just a simple reality is, oh, tell me what you think so I can make a better informed decision. You see, that's the way leadership and that works too, because if you don't know what you're talking about and you have an opinion and leadership comes up and he says, listen, let me counsel you, you can either listen or you can run. Again, I point you back to the word. You tell me which one is going to bear good fruit. We should not be challenging each other for who wears the pants in the house. Last time I checked, marriage was a selfless act. God is the head of your home. Husbands, you will be the covering that will stand there submitting to him, knowing that you're going to give an account for the family that you serve. And ladies, you will give an account for that too. If I walk into any congregation and I think this is about me, I might as well turn around at me. Submission is a gift, both which you give to God and ladies you give to your husband. It is not to be taken lightly. It's not to be abused. It's to be safeguarded. Do not make marriage about your insecurities because your daddy or your mommy or your family did not raise you right. You left that in the water. Marriage is about God. Men, your wife understands that you represent him, Yeshua, as the groom. It is your responsibility to represent him well. Ladies, it is your responsibility to represent the bride of Christ. Think about what I'm saying. Together, you represent what a loving father and mother will be, and parents will give their children an identity based in the word so that they one day will be able to carry on that representation. We're all going to get it wrong from time to time. The question is, are we going to learn? I want to look at a couple of scriptures quickly. I want to go to 1 Peter 3. I'm going to read a couple of verses. 1 Peter 3 verse 1 says, in the same way, wives, submit to your husbands. Again, it's being accountable, so that even if Some of them do not believe the word. They will be won over by your conduct. Okay? Hear what he's saying. He says, you are a disciple, you live it out, and hopefully they'll see change. Without your saying anything, as they see your respectful and pure behavior. Ladies, ask yourself, has your behavior been respectful and pure to your husband? Your beauty should not consist in externals such as fancy hairstyles, gold jewelry, and what you wear. Rather, please understand what he's saying. It doesn't mean that now you have to not care about the way you look. He's saying if you're so busy focusing on the outside and you're inside, the things that are coming out your mouth, says, I don't even know why you bother to wear makeup. Have you ever met somebody that might be really attractive or are really attractive and then they open up their mouth? Hopefully that's not you towards your spouse. He says, rather, let it be your inner character of your heart with the imperishable quality of a gentle and quiet spirit. Any other translation? Before you throw things at me.
You should clothe yourself instead with the beauty that comes from within, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit.
Oh, same two words. I want you to take you back. Should her husband be nervous of his wife's response if she is supposed to be gentle and quiet? I didn't make it up. You read it for yourselves. This is something that you need to aspire to. It doesn't mean that you're always wrong. In God's sight, this is of great value. This is how the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to adorn themselves and submit to their husbands. The way Sarah obeyed Abraham, honoring him as her Lord. You are her daughters. You are her daughters. We just have to look and see for the examples. It says, if you do what is right and do not succumb to fear. You husbands likewise conduct your married lives with understanding. Let's open up your ears. Although your wife may be weaker physically, you should respect her as a fellow heir of the gift of life. Respect. Listen to the next part, men, very carefully. If you don't, your prayers will be blocked. You want to know why you're not hearing God? Maybe you should look to the one that's sitting next to you. That's a pretty serious word. If our hearts, our deepest desires is that we should be walking after Him as disciples, that we should be reflecting God's character, that we should understand, love, and nurture. And if He asked me to do anything, do I rebel? Do I scream? Do I tell Him to go away? Do I say, listen, you don't control me, you don't own me. I love you, but I'll do whatever you ask, except for that and this and this and this and this. And how dare you come here and tell me what I can do and what I can't? Can I tell you, as a leader, I've had those things in various different shapes and sizes over the years. And if that came to me, I don't even want to know what the husbands had to deal with. We make excuses. You guys can make a note. Go read Ephesians 5. We've used it many times. Talks about to the point where parents do not. Let's go to Ephesians 5. Let me not get this wrong. Ephesians 5:22. We're going to start there. Now, let me read from 21. It says, submit to one another in fear of the Messiah. It says, someone's going to hold you to account. If you treat your spouse badly, you have no fear of God. Be careful. Just as the Messiah loved his community, indeed, he gave himself up on its behalf in order to set it apart for God, making it clean through immersion in the mikvah, so to speak, in order to present this community or church to himself as a bride to be proud of, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but holy and without defect. Am I aiming to be without defect? This is how husbands ought to love their wives, like their own bodies. For a man who loves his wife is loving himself. Why? No one ever hated his own flesh. On the contrary, he feeds it well and takes care of it, just as the Messiah does to the community. Because we are parts of his body, we. Therefore, a man will leave his father and mother and remain with his wife, and the two will become one. There is a profound truth hidden here, which I say concerns the Messiah and the church. However, the text also applies to each of you individually. Let each man love his wife as he does himself, and see that his wife respects her husband. Children, what you should do in union with the Lord is to obey your parents, for that is right. Guys, they don't make up rules for nothing. They're trying to keep you within a safety line, because for some of us, we never had that, and we went a little bit wayward, and we have the scars to prove it. It has taken people years to get over some of the stuff we have seen and the stuff that we have done. You don't need to go through that. It says, honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment that embodies a promise, so that it may go well with you and you will live long in the land. Fathers, don't irritate your children and make them resentful. Have you ever had a moment where it's been sitting over there, picking on you, nagging at you, completely telling down, what are you doing them? You're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're never going to get it right. We do that to each other. We have to get better. It says, don't irritate your children and make them resentful. Instead, raise them with the Lord's kind of discipline and guidance. Bring them back into the Word. Stop haranguing them. Have you ever heard it? Ever been where people just continually tell you how bad you are? Makes you feel good, right? Grow up thinking that you're just never going to amount to anything. And then God pitches up and he says, hey, listen, I want you to be like me. He says, look, I'm not even good enough for the oaks that are around you. How am I going to be like you? He says, trust me. Oh, yeah, great. The last time I trusted someone, I got into trouble. There is more to this. We have to build them up. I'm going to leave it there. It goes into people who work and so on. But we really have a problem. Remember, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and might. And the second is, love your neighbor as you love yourself. The love he talks about there is selfless. You have to put yourself on the back burner here. Where I will stand firm as someone who is the head of the home, who is someone who has to stand up and give an account, there I will not move. But as that person in this home, it is my job to give them God. It is my job to build them up. It is my job for, and hear me nicely now, I have to address something. Guys, you cannot love your wife to the point where she figures out who she is. You're not God. Her identity is fixed in him. If you guys haven't figured that out yet, No one can tell you you're awesome and loved and accepted to the point where you actually throw away all your insecurities and all of your stuff. The only person that's going to give you that is Christ. It's God in his fullness. So if you come there expecting your spouse to fill that hole, you are going to fail time and time and time again. If you come in here thinking that I'm going to do that for you, I'm going to fail time and time and time again. I am not God. I'm a representative of the kingdom. If the cross doesn't tell you you were worth it, there is nothing I can say or do that's going to change your mind. Taking me and putting me on a tree in place of you won't even do that. Because you find no worth in yourself. Now, if I walk into a marriage thinking that it's my wife, my children, my work, if I walk around life demanding that that person has to fill me and give me my identity, you are setting them up to fail. You come in knowing who you are. You are saved, you are equipped, you're a disciple, and because of those things, I'm going to love you harder than anybody else has ever loved you. I'm going to stand there by your side when other people would have run. And I'm going to tell you, you're worth it every time. It's why I do what I do. If no one else is willing to do that for you, it's not worth your time. I'm talking to you. This is the part where we take accountability, we take responsibility, we step up and we say, this is it. Because sometimes when I look into people's marriages in the church, believers' marriages, I don't know the difference between the way believers treat each other and the way the world's marriages are. Sometimes I think the world's marriages look more appealing. That is not the way it's supposed to be. How am I supposed to show anybody else what God looks like? You guys still okay? Can I ask a favor? You know, I told you guys there would be a slight shift in things. So can I ask the ladies to leave? Give me 10 minutes with the guys, and then you guys can go powder your noses and stretch your legs and do the rest of it, because I'm calling you in 10 minutes after. Not such luck. All right, guys, listen up. Somehow we get indoctrinated, and we get stuck. All right? We get stuck in the way we see ourselves. And the world's view of a man is what? Macho. Right, unless you can bench press a car, you're not a man. We all better leave. Reagan came close at one stage, but we haven't. Okay, what else is there? What else must a man do from a world's perspective? Provide. So that's it, provide. Okay, so unless you're earning 6 figures, you're failing. What else? Come on, you're living up to it. Ingo. Protect. Right, so unless I'm a mixed martial artist, you're doing a bad job. This is all. So don't get married, don't lift your head up, and don't let anybody tell you you're anything but a failure. I want you to understand the way the world is operating. Satan is using the way the world sees as. What was a man in the 1920s? Some of you will have to think back to maybe some internet examples. None of us are really there. What was a man in the 1940s? What was a man in the 1960s? Well, the 60s, a lot of you should remember. Well, it's always on TV, Uncle Al. I didn't say you have to experience it. There are guys that were going off to war in the 40s at 18 years old, storming beaches, stepping up, laying down their life for something bigger than themselves. And less than 20 years later, you got guys there with long hair saying peace and love, taking no responsibility for anything except how much drugs they can consume. 80s? Unless you were a BG, you weren't a man. 90s, 2000s. It's always going to shift. You're never going to live up to the expectation because the simple reality is they don't know what that is. So I'm going to use some examples, and then we're going to do a quick little brainstorming session. When I say a name, you're going to tell me what sticks out about this man. David. King David. What was he?
Warrior.
He was a warrior. What else?
Musician.
Man after God's own heart, a musician. What else?
Shepherd.
He was a shepherd.
Someone that understood repentance.
I understood Teshuvah. What was the center of everything? Of a man who made people quake when he walked onto a battlefield and he said, me and my God versus you any day. You see, the very essence of who he wasn't rooted in the strength of his arm. It wasn't how much money he made. It was rooted in who he was to God. Every time he went to battle, think of that speech with David and Goliath. He understood more about faith, and I think a lot of us do. He walked in and he said, oh, well, you know, God's protected me from a lion and bear. What's the difference between this guy and that? He goes and he prays, he says, well, today you're going to know there's a God in Israel. You want to see what a biblical man is? The man puts his peg in the ground with a banner that says, I represent God, and he said, here I am. When he made mistakes, he ran to the temple. He didn't run away. Now, yes, he made mistakes. He was a guy who danced before God. He was a guy who sang songs. He was a guy who worshipped him with everything he had. That was a man after my own heart, said the Lord. Let's try another one. Samuel. Dedicated. Obedient. Prophet. Leader.
Guiltless.
Yeah, blameless in a sense. Was he a guy who cried a lot? Yeah, from time to time. Let's try another one. Joshua. Opposite. He was a guy who was panicked most of the time. He did. In spite of how he felt, he stepped up and he said, well, I'm the guy. There's no one else. Moses staring at him and says, you know, you're it. How do I know? You're it. I've pressed on you. I've prayed for you. God has said it. People, will you follow Joshua? We will follow you as if we had followed Moses. And he was still nervous. He was battle worn. He was tired. Man. At the end of his life, he calls up the leaders, and what does he say? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. This is who we are. This is what I stand for. I have been here. I have led. I have cried out. You forget he was a miracle worker. One of the biggest miracles in the entire Bible. Father, I need more time. God stops everything and he says, that's my boy. Thanks, Dad. And then he carries on smashing people. He was a man of extreme faith. Did you read anywhere about how much money he had, or how much clothes he had, or how big his house was, or whether he was an MMA champion? Or did you read how God fought battles with him and killed more people than all of Israel? Tell me about your rabbi. Wealthy, MMA champion, provider. All of the world's viewpoint tells me that if that's what a man is, Yeshua was definitely not one. So we have to change our perception a little bit. As disciples, he's our benchmark. You know that he had to look to people to fund his ministry. Ladies paid for him to do his job. He had no fancy house, no fancy clothes, didn't get any battles. We know from the descriptions he wasn't really anything really to look at. Would any of you be bold enough to tell Yeshua he's not the man? So let me ask you, what standard are you using against yourself? I'm not big enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. God did not call you because you were all that. If you were, it wouldn't be miraculous. We're not big enough. We're not strong enough. We're not smart enough. We are not eloquent enough. We're not rich enough. We cannot protect our families. Guys, you can't be everywhere all at once. Yes, it's your responsibility. God forbid someone walks into that house, you will stand between them. You are the stronger vessel. But you cannot be everywhere. You cannot provide. It's your job to get up off your butt and go to work and let God provide. Get out of your mindset that this is what a man looks like. This is a real guy. This is someone that I'm going to follow. This is someone, and start getting into the whole identity of it. A man of God is a guy who will stand up there with a spear in his hand and says, "You defile my God's tabernacle, I'm ending this now." He will stand up for truth. He will stand up against their congregation. He says, "Listen, you tell me where I've gone wrong. You might not have liked it from time to time, but I gave you this and nothing else." And when God told me to do something, I might have been scared, but I did it anyway. You see, you're carrying probably this idea of who your daddy was or who he wasn't, and you're using that as a benchmark to what is expected. My dad was 6'3", 110 kilos in a fairly lean body weight, could pick up a V8 engine without a jack or a hoist. See, it shows you how much I know, right? He could work on cars. He worked at a place, at SAA. He worked hard. He was a man's man. He was the guy that people would call if there was a fight that broke out. My uncle told us a story once back in the days of the old Ellsberg Hotel. If you guys are familiar, where the Hells Angels came for a discussion and they met Ellsberg Football Club, and people were flying off banisters from the second story. My uncle walked in there and he said he found my father, and he never recognized him as one of those oaks. The guys who they would call in trouble when a Hells Angel pulled out a gun, was about to shoot him, and my dad had his finger stuck between the hammer and the chamber and told him politely, "It's finished now, go home." Listen to me. I would never measure up to anything of the sort. I can't even sweat. But I'm not measuring myself against my dad. I'm not measuring myself against Brad Pitt. I'm not measuring myself against whomever. I'm coming to the Word of God and I'm saying, Father, you show me what a man of God really looks like, and that's what I want to be. Because that's what your family needs you to be. That's who your friends need you to be. Stop shifting. Stop thinking less of yourself because you don't know how to field strip an engine, or you can't strip a gun with your eyes closed. It's not about how strong you are, but it's about who's in you. You guys can go ponder on that. Could you please send in the ladies? One of you guys can stay if you need to. Ten minutes, and then we're back. We'll finish up.
Did anybody bring a roll of tissue?
I only cry after service. I'm hoping there was some warm kettle water at least. Did it? Well, there was. Neon nice. I sent you out first, eh? You guys could defrost a little. Come on, ladies, don't be scared. All the men survived.
It's got courage to that.
Left common sense at the door.
Then to take on a whole hall full of ladies.
Why do you think I've adopted half of you, so you can't beat me? I think we're missing a few years.
I'm messing with you.
I know you love me. I'm good. Even when you wanted to beat me, you can't. And tell those men to stop nagging you and get near. You're trying to deflect. All right, ladies. We're going to do a similar exercise of what I just did with the men. I want you to explain to me what a woman is from a world's view. This is the interactive part. Want to share?
Sexy.
Sexy, right. Okay, you have to be a certain, are we just talking about the way you are built?
Yeah.
All right, unless you have curves in all the right places, you've failed, sorry, ne? Then you're okay.
Someone that can cook and clean.
Okay.
And work.
All right, multitasking, right? In every area of your life.
And equal.
And?
And equal according to the world.
Okay, right, yes, right, equal rights, equal stance. I will have my way and you will hear about it if I don't. What else?
No, she's not asking this question.
Liberal.
In the worldly view, but you know that men have different views of what women should be to what women have that they should.
I'm asking you about how do you see a woman? So a worldly viewpoint of womanhood, not what men think women should be, because let's face it, they don't even know what they should be.
House with its
Hmm?
Nice all the time.
Nice all the time.
I harass all the time.
Independent.
Independent, nice all the time. Hmm? All right, you should also be able to make your own money.
Girls stay strong and independent.
Okay, strong and independent. Okay, so we get this kind of this viewpoint of what the world tells you, because this is what I think a lot of people, especially before they come into this, they measure according to them, how they feel like they're being successful. Whether you're doing it subconsciously or not. Now I'm going to ask you again, you might have to do some research. What was the viewpoint of a woman in the 1920s? Okay, 1940s. Okay, so somewhere in between it went from, I want you staying at home, I want you to look a specific way, and then somewhere between the 1950s and the 1960s, 1960s viewpoint of what a woman should be?
The bad girls were the fun ones, and the good girls were the ones that got married.
Right. Well, how did we define fun in the 1960s? Yeah, exactly. Half of them can't remember it. So it was okay to explore your freedom and who you were. You know, have this guy, have that guy, smoke that, try this, do whatever. And if that wasn't your bag, you're oppressive, of shame, falling into the mold and do whatever. And if you were a wife, well, and you went off and you contributed and you did whatever, and it was equal partnership and all those fun things. The 1980s, 1990s.
Women were taking a stand in the world and taking over roles of men a lot because they were going into the working world and leading homes, and I think a real push happened because that's when I entered the working world for women to establish themselves within careers and actually have powerful careers, which I think wasn't research
Previously.
before that.
All right. Would you say it's a consistent theme? They all knew it. From the 1920s to now, a woman had to be something, or did you think it changed over time? Right. Exactly. The thing is, we look at today's society and then they tell you this is what a woman looks like, or this is what a woman should be able to do, and this is what a woman is. And if you don't fit into that realm of things, you're a failure. Tell me at one point or another that didn't cross your mind. My husband's not happy enough, my house isn't clean enough, I'm not being able to manage my job, earn money, do this, do that, and all the rest of it. I'm a failure as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, as whatever. This worldly perspective is the way a lot of people define themselves, even though they think they're biblically based. So I wanted to bring it back. And I'm going to ask you guys, I'm going to name a couple of ladies from the Bible, and I want you to tell me what sticks out about them for you. If this is what a powerful woman looks like, what is it about her that really gravitates? Ruth. What about Ruth? Humility. What else? Loyalty. This is a quiet crowd. Come on.
Obedience.
Obedience? You think she was selfless? Right? Do you think she listened to counsel? Do you think she complained that no one else was looking after her when she was running around picking up the gleanings?
Smart. That's pretty smart.
Yeah, she listened to her mother-in-law. She was like, this is it. This is me and you. Did you read anything about what size skirt she could fit into? You didn't read about how she managed an entire household plus and earned a job and did all of these good things while busy patting her husband on the back, telling her how awesome he is? What about Sarah?
She was patient for quite a long time.
Yeah, and this is why I did this on purpose, because we had Sarah pre-Ishmael and we had Sarah after. She was in the beginning. She had a lot of faith in Abraham, right? You go up and then you just like tell them you're my sister. Did you guys ever think who was protecting her? Whose job was it supposed to protect her? Abraham's job. And he let fear get the better of him, and she still listened. And that kind of breaks my brain a little bit. You see who stood up for her in the end? God did. You see, your husbands, just as you guys will have noticed, that we all have shortcomings. God is the one that's going to deal with it, okay? And Sarah went from a woman of patience, a woman of trust, to a woman who's, and that's the thing, most translators will say Sarah is a princess, but it also comes from a root word that means quarrelsome. I want a baby now, 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 I want a baby now. Make it happen. And then she made an Ishmael. She made it happen. This is what I want you to see. We have good examples and we have bad. Gimme, 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 gimme. That decision is still affecting her children today. Ishmael is the forefather of all Arab nations, the same guys who are bombing everybody out of the Sea of Jacob. We make jokes. You know, I watched a teaching by a guy, he's quite well known, you know, in biblical marriage, and I wanted to see, just from a normal Christian point of view, how he would deal with it. And then, you know, he told a lot of jokes. And one of his jokes went like this. It was like, you know, the three husbands were sitting over there, and he says, you know what, when my wife talks to me, you know, he would say something like, she would come in and she would use a quiet, demure tone. He said, oh, that's nothing. When my wife comes to me, she brings my slippers, she brings me coffee, and she says, can we have a conversation? And the other guy says, you know, when my wife comes to me, she's on her hands and knees. And I looked at him and I said, what? You know, says, yeah, she's crawling on her hands and knees to get me from hiding from underneath the bed. Come out and fight like a man. And we laugh, but how far is that from the truth? You see, there's a difference between being a patient, faithful woman and one who is quarrelsome because she wants her own way. Ruth wasn't one of those, but we can learn from Sarah. What about Miriam? I'm talking about Moses' sister. What sticks out about her for you?
She was almost like a mother figure to all of Israel, and they Ninevites would actually.
Yeah.
She led them in praise and worship.
She led them in a sense. Well, praise and worship, I mean, when she died, the whole of Israel mourned. What about her younger life?
She's the reason her brothers are.
She was the one who cared. When mommy couldn't handle it and put Moses in a basket, Miriam was the one who chased her down to make sure to see what would happen. Some of you guys might not know this one, Abigail. It's one of David's other wives. I'll tell you a short story. She was married to a guy who was pretty stubborn, who didn't want to listen. David looked after his flocks and kept him while he was running away from Saul. And he said, listen, would you mind giving us a little bit of food? And the guy said, basically, drop dead. And David said, let's talk, with a sword in hand. She came out and she was the one who said, here's some food. Don't deal with my husband. He's full of nonsense. And she ended up becoming one of David's wives when he was king. She gave good counsel. What about Esther? Tell me, with our benchmark of what a woman should be, where does Esther fall in line with your thoughts on what a woman should be? Did she multitask, manage the house, manage her husband, chase all the children, do whatever? She was a woman who was ready to lay down her life for the good of her people. She was a woman who had every right to walk into the presence of the king. What did she say when her husband reached out the scepter and said, listen, anything you want, even to half the kingdom, I will give you? What did she ask for? Yeah. Yeah, no. But remember, what was her action? She said, would you honor me? Can we sit down and have dinner? I'm going to give you half the kingdom. If your husband came up to you and it was in his power and he came to you and he said, ask of me anything, up to half the country, what would you say? It's about time. Listen to her heart. She was going to petition for her people, but her heart was for her husband. He said, I want to sit with you. That's enough.
She also told you started the commission.
She didn't decide who she was. Even though she was nervous of it, right? And you guys, let's do one or two more. There's a fun one. Rahab. Oh, right. So before she realizes that this was a different lifestyle, I tell you what, let's draw a slash. Rahab and Gomer. Exactly. So Rahab understood that, hang on a second, this is my life, but this is not who I'm supposed to be. I see God, He's real, and then we have a change. Gomer is in relationship with someone who loves her and continues to chase after everything else, except her husband. The priority shifted, yes? When you look at your husband, are you telling him, this is what I want, 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 this is how you're going to do that, this is what you're going to do, this is going to do that, or you're going to say, can we just sit down and have a coffee? I've missed you. And if you think I'm picking the guy's side, don't be wrong, they should be doing that to you as well, but I need you to recognize something. What does a godly woman look like? Is she one full of rebellion, quick in tongue? Is she always chasing the next best thing? Tell me what Miriam, Yeshua's mother, tell me about her. She very much like Esther that took the point that even if this goes south, I'm dead. Do you not understand that? But her faith was in God first, and her relationship was to be with Him and to bring that reality into who she was. And when that happens, guys get better. We run around chasing stuff. It's human nature. And for some reason, ladies, you get to the point where you're so busy trying to manage and guide and push and do and all the rest of it, you don't give anybody else the opportunity to do their job. Because let's face it, you've had to do it. And I will be the man on this side of the room and saying, I apologize on all of the men who have led you to believe that that's what you should do. You should have been protected. You should have been nurtured. Someone should have stepped in and said, this is where you stay, you're by my side. Me as God's representative in this house, and I will love you that way. But they have let you down. But do me a favor, do not use that as an excuse to jump on the bandwagon and take that responsibility away, because a man will become passive faster than you can say Bob. Until he takes up his responsibility, until he takes up that reality, until he understands. And this is a big thing for a guy, that he cannot protect you. I'm telling you this now. He cannot be everywhere all the time. He cannot protect you. That's God's job. You better believe it. If someone comes into that house, there's going to be problems if you come in there and you look at my wife funny, but I cannot protect her all the time. I cannot provide for her. I can get off my butt and I can get a job and I can bring in money, but it's up to God to give me the job, to give me the health, to be able to do that. It's up to me to be wise with what I have. Just like you're not built a certain way. You're obviously not desirable. They carry more of those insecurities than you do. And we have exactly the same problem. The reality is that we've taken our eyes off what we're chasing. We are not measuring ourselves up to the right standard. And because we're doing that, we're consistently failing. That's like me trying to climb on a screwdriver and drive it down the road and think I'm useless because I'm just never going to get this right. You're trying to drive a screwdriver. It's not meant for that. You can't fly, so stop trying. What you can be is an extremely powerful, loving, nurturing tool that reaffirms, and he should do the same to you, reaffirms who you are in Christ. So that if you just, you know what, if the house is dirty, it's okay. I didn't marry a maid, I married a woman. If your kids don't have it all figured out, you know, you can be the best teacher in the world. Yeshua walked among us and he still had people that disagreed with him. So sometimes your kids are going to look at you and then they're going to go, it doesn't make you a bad mother. It just makes them hard of hearing. Not your failure, it's theirs. What you can do is hold your head up high and know that God put you with someone that generally, they just fear most of the time that they're going to let you down. If you just stand there long enough, you're going to realize how insecure and how broken they are. And I don't think you understand how powerful you are. Don't worry about the distraction that happens at the best of times. Instead of you coming alongside them and saying, I want, and then get upset when it doesn't happen within 3 seconds. Just like you used to do. And this is, again, a main thing we need to learn this, is that when you actually look at them, like really look at them, and remind them that they're just same amazing, crazy person you fell in love with. Again, I'm talking about an example where guys are actually trying. If they're living in rebellion, we're having a very different conversation. Then you come and grab a couple of other men and then we have a hard talk. That doesn't mean you don't stop, you don't walk. It doesn't mean that you go, oh, my husband's not doing it, I'm not going to do it. You need to walk out your discipleship. You need to find out your identity in Christ. You need to hold that flag up and say, this is who I am. And when we come together, man, that's when we see there's a power there that people don't. We are made very differently. You can either add to it or you can take away. When you start to doubt who you are, remember our building blocks, and I want you to remember the woman of old. They're not there just for nothing. They're there to give us a guide. Where the Sarahs stand up, where the Esthers stand up, where the Rebeccas stand up, where the Rachels stand up, where the Leahs stand up. And we can look to the best of those qualities and we can say, all right, I see them. Or do I have to see quarrelsome Gomer? Just like the men have to decide what type of man they want to be. They can either be David, the guy who danced before the ark, or David, the guy who made a Bathsheba. We have good examples in Scripture for a reason. And again, like I said, the guys, I'll share this with you, is that when we start to measure ourselves up against, and it's the same worldly thing, guys have to be buff, they have to be strong, they have to be able to knock a guy out with one punch, all of these fun things that we think that we have to be. When I said, when we look at Yeshua, who was like really the ultimate man, tell me how many bedroom house he had. See what I'm getting at? We have to look past the stuff. We have to look past that direction. We have to look at each other the way God wants us to. If we can get that right, marriages in this place will be a lot more fruitful. You don't have to carry the burdens of your husband. No? Speak.
To me, if I look at things, and I see how the world has changed from the time of our grandmothers. Women knew their place. The place was at home. It was nurturing. It was like a question, like she's working, she's actually working, because the norm was that mothers were at home, taking care of the families, doing all the things that they were meant to do. But we know that the enemy hates God's order. So he's going to, as the years progressed and the women's lib came in and equal rights for women and the men started to relinquish their responsibility and started pushing the women to go and work. Mm-hmm. So now the men are still doing their normal job. They go and work and they come home. Now the women have to go and work and come home, still do all the womanly things. Mm-hmm. So women are exhausted. Mm-hmm. They feel misused and over-abused. Yep. And all this is like, how do we function in our world the way we're supposed to according to the word? There's so much pressure it's put on women to perform.
Starts with a conversation.
Without the protection of our husbands.
Yeah, and it's a problem.
And men put more and more pressure on women to be a breadwinner.
It starts with a conversation, right? I hear exactly what you're saying. And again, a man will be quite happy to step back. This is the problem. Men are passive. It's easier for me to let you do it because you're probably going to do it better than me, so I don't have to get shouted at because you didn't do it. You didn't tell me how to do it the first time, so why don't you just do it and leave me out? You understand how many things are so wrong with that statement? We have to get back to the simple reality. The simple reality is this. We've allowed a perception, a worldly perception, to come in and warp our viewpoint on who we are and how we should function. I'm telling you this, that we need to get back to this. You have a conversation with your husband. You are either in a financial position to be able to come in with one person's salary and survive, or you're not. If we're not, how are we going to manage it? I had a discussion once with a guy. He says, listen, I do all the man things, and I expect my wife to do all the woman things. I'm like, okay, tell me what that looks like. Fix the garage, change a light bulb, mow the lawn. How often do you do that? Maybe once a week with the lawn. Change the light bulb once every 2 months, but you don't do dishes. No. How often does your wife do dishes? So, you wanted to do washing and ironing and look after the kids and cook, but you eat. Yeah, but that's a woman thing. I'm like, don't you think it's a little unfair? Another guy once told me, I'm not going to mention names, says, was it wrong of me to expect my wife to do all of this stuff and I just go to work? Yes. Grow up. Men are no longer being raised as men. They're being treated as boys.
And that's why men don't know how to be husbands and fathers, because they remain boys.
Where do they learn it from?
Isn't it that era where fathers went to war and they were like non-existent?
Totally.
And they also messed up a lot of the
Yeah.
family dynamics that when you're talking about.
Yeah, and that became normal. But there's no war, so why then is
They've
the...
been raised by men that were
Yeah, before. Absolutely. I have to show my son that, this is my wife, I do the ironing. She does the washing, I do the ironing. We do the dishes. I vacuum, she mops. She cleans downstairs bathroom, I clean upstairs bathroom. What is my little boy's understanding about what a man does? When there's a car tire that needs to be changed, or I go to my wife and I say, here's the spanner. The example starts with you. If you're not willing to change it in your home, don't expect it to change in the next generation. It starts with a simple conversation. Listen, we've taken our eyes off the ball. Let's get back. Same as discipleship. Same as our identities. Same as the direction. We can look and we can blame that movement, and we can blame World War I, we can blame World War II, we can blame the dog, until we take responsibility ourselves and saying, listen, we have allowed this to happen. If you want to treat men like boys, you will get boys. You know the difference between a boy and a man is? Sorry? The price of their toys. No, you can get a 50-year-old millionaire and he can go, my toys. The difference is someone that's willing to take responsibility. And men are simply not comfortable taking responsibility. And that is just plain Adam. I'm not blaming World War I. It was Adam's fault. He kept his mouth shut when he should have said, what the heck are you doing? Why do you think God said, you are now responsible? But I don't want to be responsible. I know, but you are. If you take that away from him, you haven't corrected anything under God. And I can tell you now, you guys probably can run the household by yourself, and you can multitask, and you can do all this by yourself, but you're going to be burnt out, you're going to be broken, and you're going to be unhappy. Why? Because it's not what you're supposed to be doing. Him sitting on a couch, pretending to be a child, not doing anything, is also not going to fill him, because he's not taking accountability and he's not being responsible.
So you didn't tell them that.
I am opening up the door for you guys to start to think where we went wrong. It is up to you to make the conversation and a change. I can talk about discipleship until I turn pink, until you actually walk it out and stop waiting for your husbands to do it. We are not in that fellowship where the men wear tzitzit and the girls smile. We are not in that fellowship where the men say, we're going to celebrate Shabbat and keep Passover and you sit at home. I have an equal expectation for you to step up and claim your role in God's kingdom. But you and your houses have got a responsibility to be able to take this and say, we've dropped the ball. Why don't we fix it? If they say no, please come and tell leadership. If leadership can't fix it, we're having a very different conversation. But I'm telling you this, you do not stop being a disciple of Christ because your husband refuses to take that responsibility. There were ladies that walked with Messiah when their husbands were nowhere to be found. Don't shirk responsibility. If I am not here, for whatever reason, God forbid, my wife has to carry on. And it better be according to this, otherwise I've imparted nothing to her. When we're not there, our kids are going to have to carry on. If your kids are not seeing it, they're not following. Remember, we're being affected by our hang-ups, by our hurts, by our pasts. And we are stopping short of just taking that step of faith and saying, listen, God doesn't make a mistake. This is who I am. This is truth, and this is what I'm aiming at. We're scared. We make excuses. Our kids are too small. No, it's too lazy. It's too cold. It's rubbish. No, the sad reality is because so many of the men are passive, if you stay at home, the family stays at home. They need to man up. And you need to stop making excuses for them. If they get into trouble because they make a mistake, that's part of learning responsibility, right? If I leave my home and I say something wrong, or if I throw my toys, there's no one else that's going to say, oh, this is just having a bad day. I have to go, you know what, guys, I'm sorry. I did that. I said it wrong. The buck stops here. And if I don't hold myself to an accountability that understand that Yeshua is going to look at me, Vince, and he goes, I remember when you did that and you didn't apologize. But there are so many things that are distorted in our relationships and in our marriages, and because we shirk responsibility, men become passive, women either run with it or they make an excuse because it's their husband's job. I don't think the men are doing the same. Discipleship starts with you first. Make it part of your identity, make it part of your new creation idea, then we make it part of your marriage, and then you make it part of your kids. Until we do that, all we're doing is talking. And it's going to take two. You guys want to pull in the same direction, we have to have that conversation. And if you're doing it by yourself, it's a simple conversation. I either believe in this enough to mold my life around it or I don't. Mandy, you want to add something?
No, I think I just wanted to say that all you're talking about the last 2 weekends is fantastic. But the cold, hard reality is that if every single one of us, and when the men come and when the children come as well, if each of us doesn't commit to one another to hold each other accountable to do what you're saying, we just continue creating a world that's an extension of the current world system.
Yeah.
We don't actually create the kingdom of heaven and show the world how well it works when things are done according to the right structures. I mean, as an unmarried woman, I would love to be able to come to church and go, wow, look at the married woman, look at the husbands, look how they're thriving, look at their children, look at how respectful they are, look at how well these people are doing, look at how happy these women are, look at how these husbands are just walking so with their chest up proud, their wives love. It sounds to me like utopia, okay? But I know that that's the kingdom of heaven. there would be a role model for us to look up to. I'd say, you know what, I would love to be married. I actually can't say that right now, and I'm not dissing on anyone. I'm just going,
It's a-
they seem like they're miserable most of the time, and I don't know what they're supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And I'm not picking on everyone, please forgive me, I'm not picking on anyone, in fact. I'm just going, it's not exactly inspiring to be thinking I'm going to join my life to someone else and find a whole heap of water. And that's already happened. So if we don't all commit to doing this, I would love to walk God's ways out in every single area of my life. You said last week that if we love someone, we teach them love.
Yeah.
Then surely we should all band together, including the men and the children, and say, if we love each other, let's teach each other life and show each other what that's supposed to be. So then it's not just your and Tanya's marriage. Your and Tanya's marriage then becomes, just like Mel and Mike stood up there and said, we showing up our child here for the whole community. Your marriage becomes the whole community's marriage because you're either a role model for marriage or you're not.
Yeah. It's a
And
s-
if I'm a single woman, my life has to be something to uphold for everybody else. The young ladies must go, well, if Father doesn't bless me with a husband, I see how Auntie Maggie lives and she's thriving and that's okay too. Then I serve you sure all the days of my life. But we cannot do any of that while all of us, or some of us, or even one of us, is going, the world system matters to me more than what the kingdom of heaven does.
Absolutely.
Right? So I love what we're talking about, but I'd love us to make it a reality.
Yeah, and that starts with accountability. You stand here and talk all day long until you make the show, and it's just words.
But is that maybe a lack in the church over the years? Is that you can have all the sermons in the world. When you leave a church, you're going back home.
Yeah.
And that is the reality of, it's like, we can all put our best foot forward here in fellowship, but most people don't know what goes on in my life.
But this,
So,
sorry,
so to me, there needs to be way more teaching for men in groups, women in groups, so that we can mend that chasm that has developed, even in the church. The church right now, sometimes you can't tell the difference, like the marriages in a church and the marriages out in the world. Like you said, there are more people out there that have incredible thriving marriages, and I'm thinking, what a sad testimony
Yeah.
that the world's not looking at the church and seeing they can't the answer. There is a reality there, but the church, the people in the church are as broken. Why?
I told you why. Because people coming in, they play church. I've been very upfront about why I'm here. You create disciples. You decide whether or not you're going to be a disciple. If you come in here once a week and you sit and I see no change, why are you here? I want change. I want you to take the word into your home. I want you to be accountable. I want you to obey the instructions because I know it's going to transform you. I want you to spend every night with your husband to be, and I want you to be able to go, this is it. And when we're not in that picture where we are missing things, I expect you to change. I have, okay, before we left to play, how many hours did I really have your attention? How many hours did I have your kids' attention? Versus how many hours you could have impacted your own lives with God. I'm a top-up. I'm a come in, wake up, guys, this is where we're going. Let's get focused, let's get real, and let's go. You're either going to take that message home or you're going to say, oh, that was a lovely message, and ignore everything I said. You're either a disciple or you're not. And I've been very clear. I have seen people come in here, take things, and completely ignore it because it doesn't fit with their reality, or the fact that they just don't want to. The saddest thing for me is that you're telling me, and we're going to get into this just before we close, is that you don't value Christ enough to be able to give up your life. He felt very differently about you. You can blame your husband, you can blame your kids, you can blame the weather, you can blame the country, you can blame the dog, but ultimately it's all you. I'm standing here showing you it's possible. Don't make excuses. As soon as you make an excuse, you fall back. As soon as you say, I'm not doing it because he's not doing it, you fall back. You might be in a building, but that doesn't change. It doesn't matter where we are. What matters is who you are. I have based my entire walk on a discipleship reality. And I've told you guys it's the same. Whether or not you've made that your reality, that's between you and God. And I pray you do. But if you want to see change, stop talking about it and do it. Change is uncomfortable. There's always going to be pushback. Satan is always going to come after you. You're going to hear people screaming. Kids are going to act up. There's going to be 50 million reasons why you shouldn't, but I'm telling you there's one reason why you should. Lech Lecha. You're either going to take up your cross and follow your Messiah or not. I don't want you to follow me in any way, shape, or form. I want you to follow him. And that has always been my expectation. So when I'm not here, I expect this group of people to walk after Christ, even though I'm not there. As you expect me to continue to walk after Christ, even though I'm not here. It's an individual choice. And I hope you and your spouses are able to choose it together. I really do. But if they don't, for whatever reason, God died for you. Don't take that lightly. You with me? All right, we've got 10 more minutes. Can we just call in the rest of those manly men outside? If you guys quickly need to run to the bathroom, you are welcome to. I've got one more thing that I want to say, and then there will be praise and worship, and then you guys can run away. You can complain about how much I talk when I leave. I'm just giving you an out. You only have me for a couple of sessions, so I'm going to make the most of it. I never said how long they're going to be. We'll close Shabbat out here. I'm.
Like, I don't even know what this means. Like, honestly, I'm not sitting here and I'm like, so
All right, we'll address that. Shepherds come in last. Chase the flock. Chase the flock. It's a 4-hour video of your life. All right, let's go. I don't mind staying here and carrying a Eutychus out, but you guys might. The guy fell out the second story because he spoke too much. We will. I know, like I said, if I've got enough here to go for another 2 hours.
I'll take this comment for you.
So it's begun. All right, guys. Okay. So there was a bit of a question going along the lines of, and maybe this is something you can think about it, if we are able to put together a ladies group from time to time to be able to discuss the nitty-gritties, i.e. the practical illustrations of what we've been talking about, and something for the men to get together maybe once every 2 weeks or so. And then we set up maybe a separate session. It could be on a Shabbat as well. Just say, listen, we're going to take an hour and a half and you're going to say, I have an issue. How do I deal with it? Now, the point of something like that is not so we can go, oh, you won't believe what's going on with Auntie Elsie, and I will tell you. The point is to be able to go and come around each other and we can go, listen, okay, this is the issue. How do we deal? Or maybe the guys are sitting over there because very obvious point has come in. You come over here, you put your church face on, you smile at me, and then you problems. This is not what we do here. I always find out. God will always bring to light. And as you have noticed over the years, we will always address it. Whether it's in a public group or in a one-on-one basis. But I think it would be practical. In times past, we have tried to get a men's group together. I remember having a meeting of 3 manly men for 2 weeks in a row, and then the third week, no one pitched up.
The wives will make sure they go.
I will hold you accountable. All right. So this is where we're going to finish up. We've got a simple reality, and that reality is unless you decide to be disciples first, your identity change, that you grab hold of this thing, it's going to be very difficult to walk it out. If you have found things in our discussion about marriage, about being a man, about being a woman, about raising your kids that is not lining up, I'm expecting you to go home and have the discussions. I'm expecting you to go, this is God's standard. We are either standing for it or we're not. And I'm hoping you will take that seriously enough to understand that He's going to hold you accountable to your standard. Guys, we are not doing this because you're going to find out that Vince heard. This is about you and God. Now, this last thing that we're going to discuss before we're going to finish up with some praise and worship. I want to talk to you guys about value. How much or what do you value? Value. Now, let me make it practical for you. If Shabbat is a gift, Sabbath was made for man, not man for Sabbath. What is he saying? He says, you don't serve Sabbath, Sabbath is for you. It's a gift. Is there value in God's instructions? Yes or no? How much? How many of you believe it's more, what? Give me a value. Is it worth more than $100? It's more than your life, more than gold and silver. All right, so if it is so, then why don't we keep it?
We do keep it. It's the little bits that get in the way. It's the don't kindle a please stop it.
No. Why do
It's a practical thing.
we make excuses?
Okay. Is that an excuse?
Well, focus is off. What's our focus supposed to be on Sabbath, for instance? Huh? It's about God. Where did you, young disciples, where was your rabbi on Sabbath? Where? Synagogue. Okay, then what was he doing on Sabbath? What were his disciples doing? Where were you? Is it worth more than gold? Is it worth more than life? If it is, why don't you do it? This is the simple thing. You tell me it's worth it all. You show me it's worthless. Take up your cross. Follow me. Discipleship, is it worth less or worth everything? Let's see if you've paid attention over the years. What's Messiah's favorite topic? What is it about the kingdom of God that makes it so special?
Teaches you the power, teaches you who God is, teaches you the love.
It's a simple reality. It's about Him. We study the parables, but the parables are there so that you understand Him. If you understand Him, then you get the true worth. Is it worth it? Worthless? How many of you believe this is worth your life? Then why don't you read it? Stick up your hand if you've read Genesis, read from Genesis to Revelation. Stick them up, it's okay. More than once. But it's life to you. You're telling God His word isn't. You're starting to get my gist? Obeying God's instruction. Sit still. Circumcision. Keeping Sabbath. Keeping feasts. Loving your neighbor. Loving God. It's either life to you or it's not. Which one is it? As a disciple, it's everything you base your life on. This is the truth or it's not. Here's a simple analogy. People come from different walks of life. You've been to different congregations, maybe you've got a fantastic YouTube subscription. You come up with things that is not in the Bible and you tell me it's worth more because that's what you focus on. I ask you to quote your rabbi. You cannot. You tell me his words are little to you. And this is where the old familiar reality comes in. Yes, but you don't understand. I don't have time. I have kids. I work late. Doesn't. I don't. What do you value? We either have it as something valuable or we don't. In the midst of our value system, we bring in mixed worship. You come in and you want to change Messiah's words because it doesn't fit the way you want to practice. You come in and you tell me that, yeah, that's really nice, Vince, but it's uncomfortable and I don't see it anywhere else, so I'm not going to do it. Are you starting to get the gist of the problem? You are basing your life on a truth that you've only heard about, you've never read for yourself. If you were supposed to be Christ's representative because you felt it so worthwhile that you had to die so that you could have him, so that you could follow him, that you could take up your cross and you could say, here I am, Lord, all of me, all the time, all of you. And he goes, what did I say about adultery? You go, I don't know. You say to him, he says, all right, well, let's make it a worldly problem. There's a man and there's a marriage. Yes, no. You say, I'm not here standing up to say what I think about it. I'm telling you what the Bible thinks about it. If you don't like it, take it up with God. How much do you value this walk? Do you value being part of the body? Do you value leadership? Do you value God's instruction? Do you value God's Spirit? Do you value your salvation? Or you're just telling me whenever it's okay. Well, when I don't have anything to do, when the weather is better, oh, well, when those people aren't there, then I will do it. You have made the mitzvah worthless. You have made the instruction about you and not about God. You are teaching other people that your name supersedes his because it's how you want to do it, not the way he said you must. We have opinions that become theology. And when I say, where did you get that from? You tell me, oh no, I read it in this book. I say, where's that in your Bible? It's not there. You base your eternity on what another person said, but that's okay. The internet tells you everything true. And I say, scripturally, have you tested it? You say, Vince, you're being closed-minded. You just don't understand. It's been my experience. Can I remind you that the Egyptian wise men threw down sticks and turned them into snakes? What's their experience and why is it wrong? If we worked according to experience, talking donkeys is your reality, and it's okay because you're on the right side of God, because only God can do that. It didn't work out well for Balaam, it's not going to work out for you. We take God's instructions so lightly that we walk like Nadav and Abihu. Aaron's sons that were anointed to do a work, that walked in and said, God really didn't mean what he said he meant. They died that day. When we start to check our heart condition, when we start to check ourselves, when we start to check our worship, our value system, when we start to check our feet as discipleship, am I quoting Messiah? Am I quoting myself? Because you are either adding to or taking away. It has been too many times over the years that I have witnessed people that know their Bible fairly well quote things that are never in their Bible. And when I say that's wrong, they tell me I'm closed-minded. I'm quenching the spirit. I just don't. Guys, this isn't an airy-fairy place. When I say airy-fairy, we don't move along with wings of doctrine that changes every 5 minutes. We stick to the text. How many of you believe that the Holy Spirit gives prophecy? Stick up your hand. Have you guys ever witnessed prophecy in this building? Oh, we've got a problem. Because if we're quenching the spirit, why do we have people that prophesy? How many of you realize that teaching is a spiritual gift? Do we have teachers? Evangelists? Leaders? You see, we've taken something, or we haven't let go of certain things. Many of you have come up to me over the years and you said, Vince, you won't believe when I went into that congregation at that church, there was such a weirdness that was going on there. There was no order, there was no edification. It was all over the place, and then they called it God's Spirit. Did I say, tell me more, or did I open up the Bible to a place and I said, read this and tell me what you experienced? Does it match up with the text? I pointed you back into the Word and I said, this is what it's supposed to look like. You either agree with it or you don't. Why did I do that? Because I want to be right? Or because I value the text? I either take God at His word. When He said, this is life to me, do not add to or take away. You see, discipleship is a simple reality. If I tell Yeshua He was wrong about something, I'm taking away. If I'm adding things that He never said or never did, I'm taking away. Oh, I'm adding to. I'm changing the recipe, sorry. If I want to make a chocolate cake and I put in ball bearings, we're going to have a problem, yes? If I want to make a chocolate cake and I take out the chocolate, we're going to have a problem, yes? So why is it that when it comes down to discipleship, I think I can do the same and expect the same result? It's getting late in the day and this is important. Guys, distraction is always there. Don't lose focus on what I'm telling you. You do not bring mixed worship and expect God to be happy with it. Don't tell me that you value His life, salvation, and the gift of discipleship, the gift of the Holy Spirit, and then you tell me I'm going to do nothing with it. Why? Because what do we do here? You want to learn so that you can do. Discipleship is the most important key. If you don't want to be discipled, I'm going to say this in love. There are many other congregations that you can go to. But if you're coming here, I want to show you Yeshua in every possible way I can. From genealogies, to remezes, to hidden meanings, and in lifestyle. We're disciples because we're saved. We're disciples because we let go of ourselves, our old thoughts, our old creation. We have become new creations so that we can walk after Him. What is the number one? Let me say it this way. What is the biggest move of the Holy Spirit that I can tell you've received it? Fruit. Ezekiel 36 tells us one simple truth. I will give you my spirit and it will cause you to obey my laws, my Torah. If you're telling me the Holy Spirit is causing you to make excuses, I have a problem. You either want to be or you don't. You either value it more above pearls, more above houses, more above family, more above dogs, more above anything else in life. This is your eternity, and you're either going to grab hold of it or you're going to make excuses. Here's the problem. We blame the kids, we blame the work, we blame the dog, but if you don't do it right, the dog doesn't see God, the kids don't see God, and the work will never see God. They're imposing their will on you. You are not reflecting God to them. You think God put Abraham in a place where he would become useless so he can become another Canaanite? Or did God put Abraham in Canaan so that they would see him? The fullness of Abba. You think Yeshua was put in a place where they had main roads so that they could ignore him? Or did they put him there so that he would have the greatest impact because God didn't shift on what he knew what was true? It's valuable. It's life-giving. If I believe it, I will live it. And I will want you to live it because I love you. I'm not going to change the recipe because Yeshua is the masterpiece. Why would I want to break it? There is so much information out there from guys you don't know from a bar of soap, and they say it's old. Yay, so what? Lot's wife was also old. Didn't work out well for her. You have to fight. You have to surrender. You have to submit. You have to hold on. You have to give everything you have, not because the person next to you is because it's about your salvation. And if, oh Lord, please, amen. If we are all walking in the same direction, we can walk in unity. If I'm busy grabbing people and saying, oh, you won't believe what I just heard, and you won't do this, and because we're not doing this, and because the dog is not like this, and because the chicken is not over there, and I grab them, whatever, by the time I look again, that person is 40 steps behind. They were right next to me a minute ago. You ever seen that? I have been with people that I have had to let go. And they are still in the same place 5 years ago. And I look at them and my heart breaks because I don't know why. Is it because they don't want to be disciples? Is it because they can't get over their fears? Is it because they're hurt? They never really believe that they're a new creation? Is it because they're always wanting something new and exciting? Is it because that God's call is not enough? But I can't change them. That's God's responsibility. What I can do is grab hold of it and I can fight and I can move forward because there might be one or two people I can pick along the way. We cannot afford to make discipleship about ourselves. I'm not moving Christ into my image, I'm moving into his. I cannot look at the instruction of God and say, this is comfortable for me or not. Because I'm making the mitzvah about me, and it's not about me, it's about him. If I can do that, if I can continually see Father's heart and make it about him, self leaves and then I become selfless. That will help you in your marriage, that will help you in your jobs, that will help you in the body, that will help you be a leader, that will help you be a disciple, it will help you be. If we can just grab hold of this thing and stop doubting ourselves, stop making excuses and just say, with everything I am, Passover, we drink that cup. You know which cup I'm talking about, the one that says, I'm accepting everything you are and I'm giving you everything of me. And actually mean it for longer than the 5 minutes you do. Yes, Lord, I give you everything. Sit, I'm cold, I'm going home now. Shabbat, I don't know if I'm going to be there. Sit, no, it makes me feel weird. No, I can't come to congregation because, well, I'd rather stay home and save. I can't talk to that person because, well, I just don't know them, so you don't value them. This is the disconnect. We make excuses for obedience, we make excuses out of love. Discipleship pulls us all in the same line. But without you making it your own, it's only words. But if you actually grab hold of this thing with everything you are, man, that's a life transform. Romans 8, verse 35. Who will separate us from the love of the Messiah? Trouble? Nope. Hardship? Nope. Persecution? Nope. Hunger? Nope. Poverty? Nope. Danger? Nope. War? No. Right now it's, what will separate me from Sabbath? 10 degrees. Rain. I don't feel like it. I didn't sleep well last night. My kids. My dog. I don't want to go shower. There's no water.
I'm not agreeing with this. Sorry.
Listen to what he says. We look at our lives and we measure up to how far we will go. We're just using Sabbath as an example. We'll use the same excuses about tzitzit. We'll use the same excuses about Passover. We'll use the same excuses why I can sit here one day a week and not change 6 days a week. That's what I'm pointing at. If you have a clear conscience, don't worry about it. I'm not harping on Sabbath. I'm using it as a simple as example. Why won't I be a disciple of Christ? You fill in the gap. Who will separate us from his love? You notice you're the problem? These guys would not step back from anything. In all, they understood that they were loved. Whether they were broke, whether there was trouble, whether there was persecution, whether there was poverty, whether there was hunger, whether there was danger, whether there was war, it didn't matter. His love was secure. That means I am secure. Stop questioning whether he loves you by your bank balance or your situation. He loves you because he died for you. Nothing should separate you from that truth. It says, for your sake, we are being put to death all day long. We are considered sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things, we are super conquerors. For through the one who has loved us, for I am convinced neither death nor life, neither angels nor heavenly rulers, listen, Satan himself cannot separate you from God's love. Neither what exists nor what is coming, neither powers above nor powers below, nor any other created thing will be able to separate us from the love of God, which comes to us through the Messiah Yeshua. I'm going to leave you with this. Stop hanging your head like you've been defeated. Stop walking around like you don't have answers. You have the truth. You have the answer. You have freedom. You have salvation. You have the Ruach. Why are you walking around as if you are lost? Why are you depressed? Why are you anxious? You have something that no one else can take. You have something that was bought at a great price, more value than pearls. You are his. Is that not enough? Don't tell me you're but the work, you're but my husband, you're but my wife, you're but nothing. You are his. It should be enough. Amen? Amen. I know it's late. Guys are going to do some praise and worship. If you need to run away, I don't blame you. If you guys will just stand so we can close in prayer. Before we close, we've got new bookmarks. See Shawnee? I'm just going to put them here if you haven't got one already. Right, close your eyes. Father, we stand, Father, here at your feet. Father, we know we have spoken some difficult truths, and sometimes we just get so stuck on ourselves, Father, that we just forget who you are and why we do what we do. We'll get so excited, Father, about being saved, about being yours, and then somehow in the midst of it, we just allow trials, troubles, and tribulations, and past issues, Father, and insecurities, and all this other stuff just cloud the simple reality that we are yours. That you have called us to be like you, that you have equipped us with your Holy Spirit, Father, that you have given us the gift, for many of us, the gift of discipleship, for the gift of marriage, for the gifts of being parents, Father, and for some other people who do not have those responsibilities, you've given a gift of time. Father, you've given us your word. I pray that we use it wisely. I pray that we would read it from cover to cover. Father, I pray that you would open up our eyes, that we would see you in everything, and that just by reading it, we would fall more in love with you. I pray that you would help us operate as a body. I pray for our marriages. I pray for our children. But Father, I pray that you would help us be disciples first. Father, we know we can't do this in ourselves. So I just pray that you would do it for us. I thank you for every person that's here, Father, and those that are not. For those that are coming. I just lift them up to you, Father. And I just want to give you glory. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. All right, band. Yeah, you pick it.
There you go.